Looking at this carburetor a little closer, earlier I had mentioned that these cables were off just a little bit in these grooves. It turns out it looks like this bracket somehow over time got bent. I don't know whether it was bumped or what happened to that. So that'll be an easy fix. When I get this off, I'm just going to smack it into alignment a little bit more. All of these plastic lines and stuff, as I've mentioned, are going to be replaced. Key for me in one of these rebuilds is trying to get all of the screws out so I can actually get to all of the holes and all of the ports in here, and that can be a little bit tricky on some of these carburetors that have been around for, well, this one is what, 30 plus years old, so I don't think it's ever been rebuilt. This could be a little bit challenging, but take your time when you pull these apart. Don't strip these out. I have found on some of these that rather than using a screwdriver, if I get my drill out and put it on the hammer setting really low and just give it a little vibration as it's turning counterclockwise, sometimes that's all I need to get these screws started out, and then I can finish it with a screwdriver. So I'm going to start tearing this apart, and as I tear into this carburetor, I'm learning as I go. I've never rebuilt this one. But what I have discovered is it is actually in two separate pieces, and they're held together by a couple of brackets. This one is at the rear of the carburetor, and then there's this one here towards the front, and this is the bottom of the carburetor. So there's only 3 screws that hold this together, and the two portions are linked by a series of hoses. There's this fuel line here, this fuel line here on the bottom as well, and then a real short fuel line, this black one right here. So that connects everything together. Get these apart, I just pulled those hoses off, removed those 3 screws, and now I have 2 pieces to work with. At this point, I'm going to just work on one piece at a time. I've found with carburetors that it's easier for me if I tear it apart, clean it, put it back together. That way it's still fresh in my mind, and I don't get screws in the wrong place and don't put springs in the wrong spot. Otherwise, I'm going to just tear this apart and start spraying it with carburetor cleaner. I've got the right side of this Yamaha carburetor disassembled as far as I'm going to take it. My next step is to go through, and anywhere that there is a fuel port, I'm going to run some carburetor cleaner down through it. And I like these with the little straw because you can really get some serious pressure going through them. I want to make sure that wherever the port is, that I have this carburetor cleaner coming out of somewhere else in this carburetor bowl or wherever it may lead to. This was actually the simpler of the 2 sides. This has a screw here. I didn't pull that out because that just serves as a guide for this needle and piston. This needle piston went down inside of here. There is a gasket that sat right here, and on top of this, if I put this kind of back together, when this goes back together, the most important thing is to make sure that that needle gets seated down in there properly. So that sits there like so, and then there's this large spring. It's not a very high strength spring that holds everything in alignment, and this cap goes on top of there with the 2 screws. The other thing I'm doing while I'm rebuilding this whole carburetor is I'm replacing all of the gas line. So I've already cut, this yellow is the new gas line, and I've just matched it length for length for the pieces that I'm pulling out. There are several different sizes of gas line. This is an 1/8, then I've got some 5/16 that goes on this nipple here. So you just kind of have to figure out what fits best. My recommendation is, if you don't buy a kit, that you take your carburetor with you when you go buy new hose, just so you can test fit it. So I'm going to take this carburetor cleaner and clear some of my stuff out of the way here, and I'm just going to spray this down through here And watch your eyes, but I want to see that carburetor fluid, or that cleaner fluid, come out somewhere else in the carburetor itself. That's got a small port down inside, and then there's one more on here. This one right here, I can see that that's a really small port. I'm not sure where that's going to come out, but when I squeeze this, I want to make sure that it's not pointed at my face. There we go, it's coming right out of that bottom, and it's also spraying across the room. Okay, I think that's it. If I come across one of these and I can't get fluid to go through it, I'll generally look for a real thin diameter wire. I've used this small picture hanger wire. One thing that I found is really nice is if I've got a wire brush that's falling apart, these bristles are really stiff, and they are a really nice tool to be able to put down inside of that jet or inside of that hole and kind of ream that out. It doesn't take much for those things to get clogged up after they've been sitting for a while. So this is the easy side. There's really not much left to this one, so I can put this side off in another area, and then I can start tackling the left hand side of this dual intake system carburetor.